It's the game you've been waiting for. Monday Night Football, Chiefs versus Raiders. The grudge is back, and the grudge is real. How are we going to get through this? What's going to happen? Who are the matchups to watch? And our predictions all today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome, everybody. It's Red Monday. I know that's a little bit weird, but it's going to be fun as we get ready for Chiefs versus Raiders tonight on Monday Night Football. I'm excited. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find another listen right now. Maybe the draft show. You might be interested in that. Starting to get some prospects. There's a lot going on there, and you can find us for free on every platform, everywhere. We're brought to you today by PrizePicks. This episode and all the others, they give you the picks that make fantasy super, super easy, and they'll give you a 100% deposit bonus right now if you sign up with our promo code Locked On. So check out PrizePicks. We'll talk to you more about them later in the show. Lot to cover here. Really interesting concept of like where this team is versus where the Raiders are. I'm Ryan Tracy, founder of Rogue Analytics, Performance Consulting, as well as NFL33.com and RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark. There is a lot to talk about. This game is going to be a lot of fun. I'm expecting a Chiefs team much like what we saw against the Bucs, and not like what we saw about against the Colts. So let's go ahead and get into it and start talking about this matchup and the rivalry that is the Chiefs versus the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, it's classic. It's old school. It goes back forever. But at the end of the day, it's about beating the team that's in front of you, and it doesn't matter. And got the best receiver in football, which they did, and now they don't know how to use him, which they don't. And they're still coming for you. There's been all this hubbub about everybody in the West coming for Kansas City. Well, it hasn't worked out very well yet, has it?
No, it hasn't. And I'm curious to see how that's going to continue working out for teams. And I will say this, the fall off of Russell Wilson in Denver is quite interesting to watch. I cannot fathom how that is going to work in Denver. And it's going to set them back years. But we're here talking about this Raiders team. But they did just play the Broncos. And I think that kind of plays into what we're talking about, because that Raiders team beat the Broncos. And I never would have expected that, considering they have Russell Wilson. They have some pretty good offensive weapons. And Broncos just can't get it done. They have a great defense, but I'm questioning their choice in coach and their quarterback, obviously.
Well, and it's funny, like in talking about the Broncos, we bring that up because on paper, they should have beat this team. This team, the Las Vegas Raiders, are at the bottom of the division, exactly where I predicted they would be, to tell you the truth. And the Chiefs are at the top. Chiefs have a plus 33-point differential so far. The Raiders are -4, and they've gotten 3 losses out of it. That's a lot. It's narrow margins, but it's still margins. So at the end of the day, it leads to losses. I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with the Chiefs, but it all comes down to matchups. And they went out and they got Devonte Adams on purpose to try to give Derek Carr a weapon that could keep up with what's going on in Kansas City. I think that still has the potential, but right now it doesn't seem like they even know how to turn the engine on, let alone get it running.
No, I completely agree, and I do think that that's a big question mark that they're going to have to figure out. I don't think that they're in a situation where they know what they're going to be able to do with Adams right now. And Derek Carr and Adams played together in college. Great. That worked however many years ago that was. It's not now. They don't seem to have the chemistry. They're not on the same page. They're both learning a new offense. And really, there's also questions at the coaching position, because you still hear stories about how Josh McDaniels is with his players and how that's working out in their locker room. And yeah, they won, and yeah, they're coming into this game on a winning streak or after a win. So I guess that's better for them. But starting off 0-3 with the type of talent that they have on that roster, because they do have talent on the offensive side of the ball. There's questions along the offensive line. There's questions beyond the big 3 receiving threats, but they do have talent on that roster. And to see how they played so far and to see what Josh McDaniels has been able to do makes you wonder.
It does. And I know there's a lot of holdovers from when McDaniels was in Denver. I was here at that time early on, and it just kind of fell apart because of the stubbornness of the coach. Now, I don't think that that's exactly the same this time, but there definitely seems to be kind of a stubbornness about how can we feature Devonte Adams, as we should, as the best player on this roster. And I don't know if there's any argument with that. You tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think you have to get to that point where you take your best and you feed him until somebody tries to take him away. And I think the Chiefs will be able to do that should they choose to do it this time. But is that what you expect?
I do think that that's the way that they try to go against this team. I think that they haven't had Hunter Renfrow. He got hurt with a concussion, so he hasn't been able to play. He should be back this week, so that could be big for the Raiders. Although after missing a couple of games, you wonder if it's going to be something where he can get right back into action and be just as effective as he normally is. But Darren Waller hasn't been great this season either. And you would think that a guy with his skill set and his ability with another guy like Devonte Adams on the team would be better than what he has been in years past, and he hasn't been. And part of that is Carr is focused so much on Devonte Adams, trying to force feed him the ball that he's not seeing the whole field. And you have to wonder how much that's going to play into things.
Yeah, I agree.
So just big questions when it comes to that.
Yeah. And there's going to be more. We need to get into the specific matchups per this, per that. And obviously, Andrew Wiley's going to have his hands full. We'll probably start with him here in a minute. But first, want to tell you about the easiest way to get into daily fantasy sports. And right now, it's at PrizePicks. We're brought to you by them today, and they do a great job because they have a simple concept. They give you a line per player. Right now, as we record this for Monday Night Football, Derek Carr sits at 272.5. And Patrick Mahomes sits at 280.5. All you do is pick more or less. Is that guy going to produce more yards or less yards than what their line is? You pick 2 to 5 of those players, and you can go on and get your score from PrizePicks. Easy money. It's 10 times up to your entry is the possibility. You're not competing against other people. You're not setting crazy lineups. It's just those players, more or less, and you get what you deserve. You can play all the other sports, even the crazy ones, esports, NASCAR. I don't know exactly how you do that, except maybe times on pit crews. I'd be really interested in that. But you can obviously play football, and that's what we're all here for. It's super fast, 60 seconds or less. It's easy. It's safe. It's awesome withdrawals. Currently, it's operational in 30 states plus Canada, and all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com or grab PrizePicks in any app store and put it on your phone and play daily fantasy sports. Every time you are the first-time user, you receive a 100% instant deposit match. So $100 in, they give you $100 with our code Locked On, and you get the most out of every deal so that you can play daily fantasy sports. Don't forget, it's the promo code Locked On when you sign up at prizepicks.com. So the top matchup for me is obviously going to be their best pass rusher, which is Max Crosby. I don't think there's any argument with that either. The difference is that he's going against Andrew Wiley, who knows him pretty well and has done a pretty good job against him. Last week against, I think, suspect tackles, Crosby only produced 2 pressures. They both ended in a sack, so his finish rate was 100%, which is impressive. But at the end of the day, it's not like it's a pressure machine. I think they did get a total of 10, but not double digits, not even a second from any other player. So it really is, for me, the focus is Max Crosby and taking him away with chips, with a little bit of lean in, maybe even a block from a wide receiver just to help Andrew Wiley out.
And I like what you're thinking there, and I do think that it does need to be said, and I know you mentioned it, but Andrew Wiley does know Max Crosby very well. He played well against him last year, and I think that you can kind of expect that that is going to continue this year to an extent. I don't want to say that Crosby can't do anything, but I do like that matchup. The thing I find interesting about the Raiders pass rush is they go out and get a guy like Chandler Jones, and you think that it's going to be more formidable. You think that they're going to get after the quarterback, and they really haven't so far this year. And that is a big question. And why Crosby hasn't been as productive with somebody like Jones on the other side, it's going to be something to watch, and it's going to be something that is going to be fascinating to see throughout the season, and to see if Crosby's able to replicate what he's done in years past, because he doesn't look the same, at least to this point so far this season.
Yeah. I mean, and this is going to be a tough matchup in reverse as well, because I think what you do, if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, is I throw a couple of games and the young kid Karlaftis at Colton Miller, who is not playing as well as he has in years past. He leads the team in allowing pressure. Only one of those has converted to a sack, but it is the weakness of this offense is the offensive line. And right now, in terms of allowing pressure, the weakness of the offensive line is Colton Miller. So I think Frank's had his number a couple of times, but I would like to see them rotate George Karlaftis and get that power against a more athletic tackle that maybe doesn't have the same anchor as you would like.
Yeah, that's going to be a big question, is how do you take advantage of this Raiders offensive line? Because you're right, it is their weakness. And I think Chris Jones is going to play into that as well. I know, you're talking about Colton Miller. I think that's a great call. Karlaftis going against him is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think that he is going to be obviously a high energy guy, and he can get after the quarterback. The question is, and Carr isn't one of those shifty quarterbacks. And I need to be careful how I say this, but he's not a Russell Wilson type, meaning he isn't going to run around in the pocket like a Russell Wilson will. He moves around okay, but he's not a real runner. I mean, can he beat you with his legs? Yeah, at times, but he's not a runner. He's not like Tom Brady either. He can move a little bit better than Brady can, but if you get him off his spot, that's going to create issues for that offense. So I think that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. When I start looking at this team, my bigger question is, how are they going to stop a guy like Darren Waller? I understand Devonte Adams is the best player on their team, period. I agree with that completely, but they're not able to get him the ball right now. They're not able to get him going. And is it possible they do against Kansas City? Yeah, it's possible, but I still feel pretty good about putting a guy like Fitton on him and putting a safety over the top and then just going single coverage against everybody else. Even with Hunter Renfrow, I think you're going to have L'Jarius Sneed on him most of the day because he's going to be in the slot. And I think you're going to feel pretty good about those matchups. The question I have is, how do you match up with Darren Waller? Because this team has struggled against tight ends this season, especially against the Indianapolis Colts, who don't even really have a good tight end. And Darren Waller is a very good tight end.
That's true. I think personally, I would like to see Brian Cook match up with him because of Willie Gay's absence. I think that would obviously be the optimal matchup in my opinion. But I think now you go to the dime, let Cook do what he does. He's uber athletic. He's more athletic than Waller. So even though he has the size disadvantage, he has the positional advantage. I think he showed you that he can make plays on the ball. And at the end of the day, despite his size advantage and what he's become as a tight end, I do think that Cook will be able to handle some of it. I don't think you can shut him down. I think he had 3 catches on 5 targets last week, but he was limited to 24 yards. And that's, I think, what the scope of what the Chiefs need to do as well. Now, Devonte Adams went over 100, and that's a little bit different. But surprisingly, they did get 6 targets on Josh Jacobs. Are you worried about Jacobs both on the ground but in receiving as well?
Honestly, I'm not near as worried on the ground as I am really receiving. And it's more of the Chiefs have shown they're a very good run defense. They have the ability to be a good run defense. So I think that's going to play to their advantage. And they're going to force the Raiders to throw. And I also think that Kansas City is going to get up early in this game and the Raiders are going to have to play from behind. That's just the feeling I have at this moment. So I do think that it's possible they're going to be trying to feed Jacobs out of the backfield, catch the ball, and maybe they're going to go that direction. That's a concern. But when you start looking at what this offense is going to have to do to be able to keep up with Kansas City, my other question, and I talked about this on the crossover with Q, was, if you were Josh McDaniels, what are you going to do when you get into the red zone and if you get to 4th and goal, or even 4th down inside the 20-yard line? Are you going to be going for it? Are you going to be chasing points because you're going against Patrick Mahomes? I kind of think you kind of have to in some regards. Now, really quick, before we get into our next topic, which is going to be a predictions after this next break, I want to say my other matchup that I'm really curious about is how the Raiders are going to handle Travis Kelce, because Kelce has killed them at times throughout the years. And if he has a big game this week, it could go a long way, especially when you start considering that the Chiefs have some injuries that have been cropping up later in the week, with Juju Smith-Schuster being possibly questionable to play in this game. And you also look at another guy in Trey Smith who's questionable going into this game, although I would kind of think he's going to play just because of the way he is. But I also feel a lot better about right guard, a backup at right guard, than I do about not having Juju.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, and that's
I like Allegretti.
Yeah, Allegretti's proven that he can play the game, that he can come in relief and be a performer. So I agree with you. I'm comfortable there. Juju, I think that they want out there and they need him out there.
Yep, and I agree with you on that completely. I think that Juju needs to play. If he's not able to go, that's going to be a big loss for Kansas City, but I still think they have the weapons. Sky Moore has shown that he can be effective in the NFL, and the big question is can a guy like McCole Hardman actually get involved in the offense this week? Is he back from his heel injury that it looks like it's kept him kind of out of the rotation of the offense so far? And when we get back, we're going to talk about predictions for this game, what we see, how we see it shaking out, and who's going to win. But I want to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. And if you haven't tried these yet, you absolutely need to try them. Built Bar Puffs are absolutely delicious. Let me introduce you to the new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they are healthy and tasty. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 at Built.com.
I'm officially hungry now.
Yeah, me too. I haven't had dinner yet, so
maybe I will
have a Built Bar.
And you know who else is going to eat? I hope that it's the Chiefs running game. I hope that Andy doubles down on what we saw before, because I think it's going to be important, because I expect it to be that from the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, we talked about him as a pass catcher, but on the ground, he went for 143 and 2 touchdowns last week. That's significant. Now, the Chiefs' run defense has been greatly improved this season, and Andy Reid recently gave credit to Joe Cullen for that in just bringing about the change. But in retrospect, everything that they try to do is ground and pound, get that physicality, and try to set up Carr to have some kind of play action to help him out. I think the Chiefs have shown last week that they can do the same thing. I hope that they do a little bit so that they can set it up and get them out of those too high and take advantage, because I do think there will be opportunities down the field that Patrick wants to take and will burn them.
That'd be a lot of fun to see, and I think that they definitely want to go that direction, and I think that they want to get more people involved in that downfield passing game, not just MVS, but I think they want to get Hardman involved, and I think they want to get Sky Moore involved in that too. And don't forget that Justin Watson has one of the biggest plays that Kansas City's had this season. So that's another guy that they can throw out there. And you also look, and I don't think he'll be active this week, but I do find it interesting. They brought back both Marcus Kemp and Chris Conley to the practice squad.
Oh, Chris Conley, back in the fold.
Yeah, don't think either of them play this week. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Kemp is a special teams guy that gets activated for this game. That's always a possibility. But Chris Conley is an interesting one, because say what you want about Patrick and all the plays he's had, he still has one of the best plays to Chris Conley that I will never forget.
Right.
Running around with the 49ers. Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
and I know that wasn't Conley, but
Right. But kudos to Conley, because he's gone out to other organizations. He's had, an uptick in production because he didn't have Tyreek Hill, and he didn't have, an offense that didn't want to throw the jump ball very often. I hope that they bring that back. I think if Chris does make it on, I think that helps them expand on what they do to Jody Fortson. I hope Jody Fortson gets more targets this week as well. At the end of the day,
would be nice as well.
I think they start this game out hot. They run a little bit like Andy wants to in the 15 to set up the play action. I think the play action works. I think they get out to a decent lead. I don't think that the Raiders are going to be able to keep up. Now, that doesn't mean that they shut down Jacobs on the ground or Adams in the air, but I don't think they can keep up scoring points. So as it all comes down, I think they stay on target. I think they make sure that they're working the quick game as they did last week and just kind of played with the formula that worked for them. I don't see this being that close in the end. Now, I give a prediction on RGR last week, but I'm gonna update it a little bit here, because I don't see it quite as good as I did before. I think it's 34-23 Chiefs, and it's really not as close as those numbers sound.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from on both those angles. And the big question when it comes to the Raiders is, are they going to be able to be successful in the red zone? Are they going to be able to put points on the board and score touchdowns when they're in the red zone? Because that's where they've struggled the most this season. And if they can do that, then they have a better chance to stay in this game longer. I don't think it's going to matter. I don't see them getting the ball down into the red zone that often. Unless Kansas City is turning the ball over, and then that's going to be a whole other ball game and a whole other issue. For me, I look at it, and I really like your score, but I will go 34-21 Kansas City. I do think that maybe it looks a little closer than it is, because I do think Kansas City is going to get out to a 2-score lead at some point in the first half, and then you're going to see a Raiders team that may throw the ball more than they probably should. And I would imagine that Kansas City is going to get a pick, maybe 2, just because Derek Carr has been locking on Adams so much at times that when he starts going other places, I think he's going to be a half second behind. And I think that's going to cost him in this game.
It makes a lot of sense. We'd love to know what you think. What is your prediction? Put it down in the YouTube comments. Put it in the Spotify reviews, the Apple reviews, whatever you would like. There's a lot coming. I know it's weird being Red Monday, but we hope that you're excited. We are excited. We are going to be live post-game, a little bit delayed. Immediately, I'll be live on RGR. You can come over here after that. We will have Matt Derek after the pressers. We will do a live show tomorrow night after the ball game and get you the audio right after that as well. So hope you're excited. Going to be a great game. The rivalry can't be stopped. Thanks for listening to us today. Enjoy your Red Monday, and we'll talk to you post-game.